My beloved child. There is a reason you found this message today. Out of all the voices competing for your attention. Out of all the distractions surrounding your life. Your eyes were guided here for a purpose. Something sacred is unfolding behind the scenes. Even if you cannot see it yet. Even if your heart has grown tired from waiting. Heaven has not forgotten your name. In fact, your name was spoken today in a moment you never witnessed. And what happened afterward carries a meaning far deeper than you realize. Pause for a moment and ask yourself. Why have certain thoughts been returning to you lately? Why have certain memories appeared out of nowhere? Why has your spirit felt as though something important is drawing closer? These are not meaningless coincidences. They are whispers. Gentle signs. Small echoes from a larger story that is beginning to reveal itself. For a long time, you believed that silence meant nothing was happening. But silence is often where the greatest miracles are prepared. A seed grows in darkness before it breaks through the soil. A sunrise begins long before the first ray appears. And sometimes, a destined connection begins moving toward you before your eyes can recognize it. Today, Heaven wants you to know something that may surprise you. Someone connected to your future has been thinking about you far more than you imagine. Not casually. Not briefly. But repeatedly. Unexpectedly. Almost as if an invisible thread keeps bringing them back to thoughts of you. They cannot fully explain it. Yet every time they attempt to focus elsewhere, something reminds them of a person they have not completely met in the way they are meant to. You. And before you dismiss this message, before logic convinces you that nothing extraordinary could possibly be happening, listen carefully. There are moments when destiny speaks quietly. Not through thunder. Not through dramatic events. But through a feeling. A nudge. A name that suddenly enters someone's mind without warning. Today, your name carried that kind of energy. It appeared unexpectedly. And when it did, the atmosphere shifted. What seemed like an ordinary conversation became something more. Something meaningful. Something neither person fully understood at the time. Because the moment your name was mentioned, questions began to arise. Who are they? Why do they feel familiar? Why does their presence seem important even from a distance? Why does it feel as though our paths are somehow connected? My child, these questions were not random. They emerged because certain connections are recognized by the soul before they are understood by the mind. And this is where the story becomes even more intriguing. Because what happened next was something no one anticipated. The conversation did not end after your name was spoken. It grew. It deepened. Your soulmate lingered on the subject longer than expected. Longer than logic could justify. Longer than coincidence could explain. And with every passing moment, pieces of a realization began forming inside their heart. A realization they were not fully prepared to face. You see, there comes a point when destiny stops whispering and starts becoming impossible to ignore. Your soulmate may not have all the answers. They may still be trying to understand why their thoughts keep returning to you. But something is changing. Something is awakening. Something that has been hidden beneath the surface for longer than either of you realize. And tonight, as this transformation continues quietly in the unseen realm, a new detail is about to emerge. A detail connected to the exact words they spoke after mentioning your name. Words that revealed far more than they intended. Words that exposed a truth even they had been trying to avoid. And when you discover what those words were, everything may begin to make sense. But that revelation belongs to the next chapter. Because what your soulmate admitted after speaking your name changes the entire story. The moment seemed ordinary. No bright lights appeared. No dramatic sign announced what was happening. Yet some of the most important moments in life arrive disguised as ordinary conversations. And this was one of them. After your name was mentioned, a brief silence settled over the room. It lasted only seconds. But within those seconds, something unexpected happened inside your soulmate's heart. A feeling surfaced that they could no longer push away. A feeling they had been trying to understand for far longer than they admitted. You see, my child. People can hide thoughts. They can suppress emotions. They can distract themselves with responsibilities, schedules, and endless noise. But the soul always recognizes what belongs to it. And when that recognition begins to awaken, avoiding it becomes difficult. Your soulmates suddenly found themselves speaking about you with unusual sincerity. Not because someone forced them. Not because they planned to. But because something inside them needed to be expressed. The words emerged naturally. Almost as though their heart was speaking before their mind had time to interfere. And what they said caused everyone listening to become very quiet. Because hidden within their words was a truth they had never spoken aloud before. A truth they barely understood themselves. They admitted that thoughts of you had been appearing more frequently. Unexpectedly. At random moments. While working. While resting. While driving. While trying to focus on completely unrelated things. Your presence seemed to arrive without invitation. Yet somehow, it always felt welcome. Strange, isn't it? How can someone miss a connection that has not fully arrived? How can someone feel drawn toward a person they are still discovering? The answer lies beyond logic. Some connections begin long before circumstances bring two people together. The soul often travels ahead of the timeline. And that is exactly what is happening now. The more your soulmate spoke, the more they realized they were revealing feelings they had never intended to discuss. At first, they tried to laugh it off. They tried to make light of it. But every attempt only led them back to the same conclusion. You mattered. More than they expected. More than they could explain. More than they were comfortable admitting. And then, a question was asked. A simple question. Yet it changed everything. Someone looked at your soulmate and said, "Why do you talk about them that way?" The room became still. Not because the question was complicated, but because it struck directly at the center of what they had been avoiding. For a moment, they didn't answer. Not because they lacked words, but because the honest answer frightened them. Deep down, they knew something important was unfolding. Deep down, they knew this connection was becoming impossible to ignore. Have you ever felt that, my child? Have you ever sensed something meaningful approaching before you could fully see it? That strange mixture of excitement and uncertainty? That quiet feeling that life is preparing a surprise beyond your current understanding? Your soulmate is standing in that exact place right now. And every day that passes, the feeling grows stronger. Because destiny has a way of removing distractions. It has a way of guiding people toward truths they can no longer escape. The signs are becoming clearer. The emotions are becoming stronger. The awareness is becoming deeper. And soon, a decision will need to be made. Not by force. Not by pressure. But by the natural unfolding of what has already begun. Yet heaven wants you to understand something important before this story continues. The timing of divine connections is never accidental. While you have been wondering whether anyone truly sees your value. While you have questioned whether your patience has been worth it. Unseen preparations have been taking place. Doors have been shifting. Paths have been aligning. Circumstances have been quietly rearranging themselves. Even the delays that frustrated you carried a purpose. Because certain blessings require precise timing. And the closer you move toward that appointed moment, the more undeniable the signs become. That is why your soulmate's reaction surprised even them. What began as a simple mention of your name evolved into something far deeper. A realization. An awakening. A recognition they could no longer deny. And then came the statement that changed the atmosphere completely. A statement so honest. So revealing. That everyone listening immediately understood something your soulmate was only beginning to discover. The moment those words left their mouth, the entire conversation took a different direction. And what they confessed next revealed exactly how deeply this connection has already reached into their heart. But that confession belongs to part 3. Not every sign arrives wrapped in certainty. Sometimes heaven speaks through moments so subtle that they can easily be overlooked. Yet those who are meant to receive the message always feel something unusual when it appears. And that is exactly what happened. The conversation had ended. Life seemed to return to normal. People moved on to other topics. Responsibilities called for attention. The world continued turning as it always had. But inside your soulmate, nothing felt quite the same. Because once a truth begins awakening, it cannot simply go back to sleep. The words they had spoken about you continued echoing in their thoughts. Again and again. As though their heart was asking them to revisit something important. At first, they tried to ignore it. They focused on practical matters. Daily routines. Obligations. The endless distractions that often fill our lives. Yet no matter where their attention went, the feeling followed. Quietly. Persistently. Patiently. Then came the moment. A moment so unexpected that it stopped them in their tracks. Perhaps it was a song. Perhaps it was a conversation. Perhaps it was a name appearing where they least expected it. The exact form does not matter. What matters is how it made them feel. Because suddenly, without warning, they were reminded of you. Not lightly. Not casually. But with unusual intensity. It felt as though something invisible was trying to get their attention. Trying to show them something they had not fully understood before. And for the first time, instead of pushing the feeling away, they listened. My child, this is where many people miss their blessing. They receive signs but dismiss them. They feel guidance but ignore it. They sense movement but convince themselves it means nothing. Your soulmate almost did the same. Almost. But something inside them refused to let the moment pass. The feeling was too strong. Too clear. Too meaningful. And so they began reflecting on everything that had happened recently. The conversations. The thoughts. The emotions. The repeated reminders. The strange sense of familiarity. The growing importance of your presence. Piece by piece, the puzzle began forming a clearer picture. And that picture led them toward a realization they could no longer avoid. You were not appearing in their life by accident. You were not simply another passing connection. You represented something different. Something rare. Something valuable. The realization did not arrive all at once. It unfolded gradually. Like dawn spreading across the horizon. Like a curtain slowly being lifted. And as understanding grew, so did their desire to know more. To understand more. To move closer to the truth. Because there comes a moment when curiosity transforms into intention. And that moment was approaching. Have you noticed how certain people enter your life and leave little impact? Yet others leave an impression that remains long after they are gone. The soul recognizes depth. It recognizes meaning. And your soulmate was beginning to recognize both. But heaven had prepared another lesson. One that would challenge them in an unexpected way. Because recognition alone is not enough. A person must also choose courage. And courage was exactly what would soon be required. You see, the closer someone gets to something precious, the more vulnerable they become. Suddenly the possibility of disappointment appears. The possibility of being misunderstood. The possibility of taking a step into the unknown. These fears visited your soulmate. Briefly. Quietly. Yet they were there. Questions surfaced. What if this feeling is real? What if this connection truly matters? What if life is leading me somewhere I never expected to go? For a short time, uncertainty attempted to speak louder than faith. But then something remarkable happened. Instead of weakening, the feeling strengthened. Instead of fading, the connection became clearer. Instead of disappearing, your presence occupied an even greater place in their heart. And that is when they understood something profound. Some feelings diminish when examined closely. This one did the opposite. The more attention they gave it, the stronger it became. The more honestly they faced it, the more undeniable it felt. And that realization changed everything. Because now they were no longer asking whether you were important. They were beginning to ask what they should do about it. That question marked the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter filled with decisions. A chapter filled with movement. A chapter that would bring hidden emotions closer to the surface than ever before. Yet before any action could be taken, one final conversation needed to happen. A conversation that would reveal what your soulmate truly believes about you. Not what they hope. Not what they imagine. But what they genuinely feel deep within their heart. And when those words are finally spoken, they will reveal why your name has become impossible for them to forget. What they are preparing to admit next changes the entire direction of this story. And that revelation belongs to part 5. There are conversations that pass through life unnoticed. And then there are conversations that quietly alter the future. The one that was about to take place belonged to the second kind. Your soulmate did not plan for it. They did not schedule it. They did not wake up expecting their heart to reveal what it had been protecting for so long. Yet heaven often chooses unexpected moments to reveal important truths. And this was one of those moments. The days following their realization felt different. The world looked the same. The routines remained familiar. But internally, something had shifted. The questions that once lived in the background had moved to the forefront. The feelings that were once easy to dismiss had become impossible to ignore. And the thought of you, it continued returning. Not because they forced it. Not because they searched for it. But because it arrived naturally. Effortlessly. Like a river finding its path. My child, there is something powerful about consistency. A random thought may appear once. A coincidence may happen twice. But when something continues showing up again and again, it deserves attention. That is what your soulmate finally began to understand. The pattern was becoming too clear. The reminders too frequent. The emotions too genuine. And so, during a quiet conversation with someone they trusted, the truth began to emerge. At first, they spoke carefully. Choosing words with caution. Trying to explain feelings they themselves were still learning to understand. But the more they spoke, the less they could hide. Because truth has a way of finding its voice. Eventually, they stopped filtering every thought. They stopped analyzing every emotion. And they simply spoke from the heart. What came next surprised even them. They admitted that thinking about you brought a sense of peace. Not excitement alone. Not curiosity alone. Peace. A calm feeling. A feeling of possibility. A feeling that life might be preparing something beautiful. The person listening immediately noticed the sincerity in their voice. There was no pretending. No exaggeration. No performance. Only honesty. Pure and simple honesty. And then a question was asked. A question your soulmate had secretly been asking themselves. What makes them so different? The answer did not arrive immediately. For several moments they remained silent. Reflecting. Searching. Feeling. And then they finally found the words. The words that had been waiting beneath the surface all along. They explained that there was something about your energy. Something about your spirit. Something about your presence. Even from a distance. Even through limited interaction. Even through circumstances that had not fully brought your paths together. You felt real. In a world filled with masks. You felt authentic. In a world filled with noise. You felt peaceful. In a world where many people seek attention. You carried something deeper. And that difference stayed with them. Long after conversations ended. Long after distractions arrived. Long after the day was over. My child. Never underestimate the power of authenticity. People remember how you make them feel. They remember sincerity. They remember kindness. They remember genuine hearts. And whether you realize it or not, the qualities you sometimes overlook within yourself are the very qualities leaving an impression on your soulmate. While you have questioned your journey, someone else has been recognizing your value. While you have wondered whether your patience matters, someone else has been noticing your strength. While you have doubted certain parts of yourself, someone else has been appreciating those exact qualities. That is why heaven brought this message to you today. Not to create false certainty, but to remind you that unseen things are moving. Important things. Meaningful things. Because there is another part of this story that has not yet been revealed. A part that your soulmate has not shared with many people. A private realization. A realization that arrived late one evening when everything was quiet. No distractions. No conversations. No outside influence. Just their thoughts. Their heart. And the truth. It was during that moment that they finally asked themselves a question they had been avoiding for a very long time. A question that changed everything. A question connected directly to you. The answer arrived slowly. Yet once it appeared, it could never be forgotten. And when your soulmate accepted that answer, a new chapter began. A chapter that would bring them closer to a decision they never imagined making. Because what they realized that night revealed the true depth of their feelings. And what they plan to do next may be the very thing heaven has been preparing all along.